They say no fly has ever landed on Baba Tunde's meat. No stench, no spoilage, not even bones left behind. The elders say he whispers to his cuts. But last Tuesday, a girl saw him bleeding without a wound. The morning air stung with the tang of iron as Baba Tunde sliced clean through a goat's throat. But the goat didn't scream. It simply laid still, eyes blinking in slow understanding, as if it had known this day would come. The butcher's blade was silent. Not a clink, not a scrape. His apprentice, young Ayo, stood frozen, the bucket in his hands wobbling slightly. Tunde glanced at him with a stern nod. Collect. No time for questions. The meat, once hung, gave off no scent. Not even the blood attracted flies. The village children giggled as they passed, pointing to the slabs. Look, meat from the sky, they'd chant. What they didn't know was that the animals had stopped crying long ago. No squeals, no grunts, no struggle. Some even walked to the shed themselves. And Baba Tunde never sharpened his blade. He never needed to. Ayo couldn't sleep that night. The silence of the animals haunted him. He heard whispers outside his hut, not human, not wind. He opened the door and saw nothing, but the smell of warm blood followed him back inside. The next day, he sneaked into Baba Tunde's shed before dawn. He found no carcasses, only bones. Clean, glistening, white, stacked neatly in corners, forming strange symbols on the ground. The symbols pulsed faintly, like the embers of a fire struggling to breathe. Ayo touched one and it was warm, not just warm, alive. He staggered back, heart thumping. Behind him, Baba Tunde's voice whispered, "Some things should never be touched in darkness." The village chief ordered a feast to honor the season's blessing. Baba Tunde delivered meat beyond imagination, tender, glowing slightly under the sunlight as if kissed by spirits. The elders chewed slowly, reverently. One elder, blind since birth, cried mid-bite. "I see her," he said. "My mother. She's laughing." The villagers gasped, but said nothing. The meat seemed holy, but its taste stirred something ancient in each of them. That night, 3 children did not return home. Their parents blamed spirits. But Ayo noticed their sandals, left by Baba Tunde's shed. No blood, no signs of struggle, just sandals, facing inward, as if they had walked in willingly. Ayo confronted Baba Tunde in the dead of night. "What are you doing to them?" Higi demanded. Baba Tunde stared into the fire. "Nothing they haven't done to themselves," he said. Then he leaned close, eyes gleaming. "The meat is pure because it remembers. It remembers hunger, fear, sacrifice." He pulled out a scroll, bound in dried skin, like etched with moving symbols. Ogun asked for flesh. I gave him loyalty. Ayo wanted to run, scream, anything, but his legs locked. "Watch tomorrow," Tunde said. "When I call the next one, you'll see who walks in." Ayo trembled. He didn't sleep. And at dawn, he heard footsteps, small, bare, walking toward the shed. The child walked slowly, barefoot, eyes wide but unseeing. Ayo crouched behind a tree, breath caught in his throat. The little girl stopped before the shed, then bowed. Baba Tunde emerged. From the mist, his hand outstretched, she placed her tiny palm into his. No fear, no struggle. The butcher looked toward the tree where Ayo hid, eyes meeting eyes. He smiled. The door creaked open, and both vanished inside. Ayo ran to the door minutes later, hands shaking. He flung it open. Empty. No girl, no Baba Tunde. Just the bones, now rearranged. Ayo noticed one was fresh, too small to be a goat's. He threw up beside the threshold, and in the smoke curling from the floor, a voice laughed. She wanted to be seen. Ayo stumbled into the market the next morning, pale and wide-eyed. He grabbed the arms of villagers, warning them not to eat the meat. They laughed. "You're just jealous of the butcher's fame." One elder whispered to him, "Tunde saved my son's life. Who are you to speak against a miracle?" Ayo looked around. No one would listen. That's when he saw Mama Ife, the blind woman who'd seen during the feast. She walked differently now, faster, stronger. She waved at him. "I had a dream last night," she said. "My husband came to me. He told me not to fear the flame. He said the meat was a gift." She opened her mouth wide and laughed. Ayo turned and ran. Something was wrong. People weren't changing. They were being replaced. Ayo returned to the shrine that night, meat in hand, heart pounding. He placed it on the fire again. This time the flame turned green, not blue, and the smoke didn't rise. It crawled, like fingers searching for flesh. The ancestors did not whisper. They screamed. "He feeds from the sacred wound," one shouted. "He has opened the wrong gate." The meat crumbled into ash, then reformed into a heart, beating, alive. Ayo backed away, but the shrine shook. Candles fell. Wind tore through the room, though no door was open. On the wall, blood wrote, "You will forget your name too." Ayo screamed. The heart blinked. He woke up far from the shrine, lying face down near the river. His arms were covered in cuts, names carved into his skin, not his own, names of the missing. He tried to stand, but a sharp pain stabbed his side. Baba Tunde stood nearby, holding a jug of water. "You see too much, boy." He knelt beside him. "But see this, the gods do not favor those who watch, they favor those who feed." He poured water onto Ayo's wounds. The names sizzled and faded. "You'll forget soon," he whispered. "You'll forget everything but the hunger." As Tunde walked away, the sound of chewing followed him, but there was no one else there. Ayo awoke in his hut, clean, calm, without a single scar. The names were gone. His memory, patchy. He remembered fire, whispers, maybe a river, but when he tried to recall faces, all he saw was red, thick, dripping red. A knock at the door startled him. It was Baba Tunde, smiling gently, holding a wrapped parcel. "For your mother," he said. Ayo blinked. "She's dead." Tunde tilted his head. "Not anymore." He handed the package over and walked away. Inside, the meat pulsed faintly, like it had a heartbeat. His hands trembled as he held it. That night, Ayo heard his mother's lullaby outside his window, soft and unmistakable. He ran to the burial grounds. Moonlight carved shadows on the graves. He stopped at his mother's. It was open. Not dug, not desecrated. Open. Like a lid lifted off a box. Inside, no body, just meat, still warm. Ayo dropped to his knees. Something moved behind him. She was grateful. Baba Tunde's voice came from the dark. "She told me she was tired of sleeping." Ayo screamed and grabbed a nearby rock, but when he turned, Baba Tunde was gone. In his place stood a goat, staring, silent. The rock slipped from Ayo's hand. The goat bled from the eyes, but smiled. The next market day, the village swelled, with new faces, strangers with familiar eyes. A man claimed to be the long-dead brother of the chief. A child claimed to be her grandmother reborn. Baba Tunde stood at his stall silent as ever. His meat never ran out. Ayo watched from afar, unsure if he was still Ayo. Then, an old woman bit into a roasted thigh and began to chant. Words from the old tongue no one had spoken in generations. People dropped their baskets and knelt. The meat was not only pure, and it was awakening something older than language. Ayo locked himself in the shrine and lit every candle. He drew symbols of protection in chalk, in salt, in his own blood. He prepared to ask the ancestors for truth or death. But when he chanted their names, none answered. Instead, a thick fog filled the hut. In the fog, he saw children, silent, watching, eyes too wide. They raised their hands, palms showing fresh cuts. They weren't seeking help. They were showing allegiance. "He feeds us," one girl said, "and we remember who we were." Then her face split open, not with pain, but with joy. Her second face and beneath looked just like his. Ao couldn't breathe, not from fear but from recognition. The second face, his face, on the girl in the fog grinned wider than humanly possible. "We are your beginning," she whispered, and the fog collapsed into her mouth. When it cleared, the shrine was untouched. No children, no blood, but a mirror sat in the center of the room. He approached, heart in free fall. His reflection didn't move with him. It stared, blinked, and whispered. "He gave you to us before, your first cry." Ayo's knees buckled. "Who am I?" he muttered. The reflection smiled. "Not who. What?" He ran into the night, barefoot, following no road. The forest swallowed him. He stumbled over roots, torn by branches, until a clearing opened, a circle of bones, perfectly arranged. In the center stood Baba Tunde, arms raised to a sky thick with stars. Around him floated strips of flesh, unconnected to anything, still warm. "You're here," Tunde said without looking. "It's time to return what you owe." Ayo screamed and lunged, but the moment he crossed the bone circle, his body froze. He couldn't move, couldn't blink. "The blood remembers," Tunde said. "Even when you forget." Visions slammed into Ayo's skull, not dreams, memories. His birth, not in a hut, but in a cave lit by fire and chance. He was wrapped not in cloth, but in sinew. Baba Tunde had held him, whispered to his forehead. "This one will carry the door." Through Ayo's eyes he saw himself at 5, leading a goat into the butcher's hut. At 12, drawing symbols on the bones. At 16, his hands carved, the meat he would later eat. He had never been an apprentice, he had been a vessel, and he had offered himself, willingly. He collapsed. The bone circle faded into ash. Baba Tunde knelt beside him, placed a hand on his chest. "Now you understand why the meat is pure," he said softly. "Because it is chosen, because it is willing, and because it remembers the price." Ayo wept without sound. Tunde smiled. "Your body forgot, but your blood never did." He handed Ayo a blade carved from obsidian and horn. "The Feast of Souls begins tomorrow. You must cut the first piece." Ayo stared at the blade. It pulsed. It breathed. In the distance, drums began to beat, slow, steady, ancient. The drums grew louder as the moon reached its zenith, casting silver light across the village like a blade. Ayo stood before the gathering crowd, clutching the pulsating blade that seemed to hum with breath. The villagers, once friends and strangers, now wore expressions of reverence and hunger that bordered on worship, not for Baba Tunde, but for Ayo. They chanted his name like it was a title, not a person. The ground around the shrine was painted with symbols drawn in dried blood, all spiraling toward a stone slab at the center, slick with some black ichor that steamed in the cold air. A child stepped forward, face serene, and without a word laid herself on the slab, eyes fixed on Ayo. No fear, no hesitation. The blade in Ayo's hand trembled as he stepped forward, breath frozen. Baba Tunde's voice was a wind behind him. "You do not kill. You remember. You return her to the source." Ayo tried to scream, but no sound came. As the blade touched flesh, the girl smiled. The steel slid effortlessly, warm blood spilling, not onto the ground, but floating upward, forming patterns in the air. The crowd didn't flinch. They sighed, exhaling as if their lungs had finally found air. Then something impossible happened. From the blood, a face formed. The face of Ayo's mother, lips moving, speaking the old words, the words from his childhood nightmares. "The door must remain open, my son," she whispered, "or they will come through angry." And as the face dissolved, the blood rained, back down, not red, but silver. The silver blood soaked into the ground, hissing as it vanished beneath the ritual slab, and Ayo staggered back, blade still hot in his grip, though he no longer remembered raising it. The villagers remained perfectly still, eyes closed, breathing in rhythm, as if asleep and dreaming the same dream. From the dark edges of the clearing came a low, grinding sound, stone against stone, and the earth trembled as a circular plate near the slab began to turn, revealing a hollow pit beneath the village, lit not by fire, but by a deep violet glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Something ancient breathed up from that hole, a scent not of death but of memory, wet clay, ash, and rain on burned skin. Ayo peered over the edge and saw steps spiraling down into blackness, and at the bottom, a flicker, not of flame, but of movement. Baba Tunde approached and placed a hand on his shoulder. This is the path the meat walks after the offering. Before it is reborn, it must remember its first form. You must follow it. You must go down. Ayo's legs moved without his command. The villagers parted silently as he descended into the earth, the chanting now reversing, playing backward like a cursed lullaby. Each step he took erased a piece of his thoughts, the name of his first friend, the color of his father's robe, the sound of his own voice laughing. The blade in his hand pulsed harder now, hungry, alive. And behind him, the stone disk began to grind closed, sealing the way up as surely as a tomb. The cavern swallowed Ayo whole, a cold, damp silence pressing against his ears, broken only by the soft pulse of the obsidian blade in his hand. He took cautious steps, the rough stone beneath his feet slick with moisture, and the faintest shimmer of something ancient. Remnants of past offerings, perhaps, or echoes of forgotten souls. The violet glow stretched and flickered, revealing walls carved with intricate symbols of bones and fire, stories etched by hands long turned to dust. Deeper he went, the air thickening, as if he was breathing in centuries of secrets. Suddenly a sound pierced the stillness, a low whisper, threading through the darkness like silk, calling him by names he did not remember but felt as truth. Ayo, Ayo. The voice seemed both near and everywhere. His heartbeat quickened, a flood of images crashing inside his mind, a circle of children, faces bright and pale, kneeling in the night, a butcher's knife, slicing not flesh but the veil between worlds, and a promise spoken in a language lost to time. He clutched the blade tighter as the glow intensified, revealing a pool of still, dark water reflecting not his own face, but Baba Tunde's, smiling, expectant, and ancient. This is where the sacrifice becomes the keeper, the voice whispered again. Ayo leaned closer to the water's surface, fingers trembling. The moment his skin touched the liquid, a shudder ran through him, memories flooding back in torrents, joy, pain, betrayal, and a hunger so deep it carved itself into his bones. He gasped, realizing he was not only descending into a cave but into the very heart of the butcher's secret, a secret written in blood and bound by spirit. Ayo pulled back from the water, gasping, his mind fractured by the flood of memories that were not entirely his own. The cave seemed to close around him, the violet light flickering as whispers spiraled into a chorus, calling out names long buried beneath generations. Baba Tunde's voice echoed, steady and commanding. You carry the burden of the door, Ayo, not as a slave but as its master. The meat is pure because it walks the line between worlds. You must choose, become the guardian or be consumed by the hunger. Ayo's heart thundered. Around him, shadows shifted and took shape. Faces of the missing children, eyes burning, with silent accusation and longing. They reached for him not with anger, but with desperate hope. The obsidian blade in his hand grew impossibly heavy, yet alive with power, a link between life and death. The choice pressed on him like a suffocating weight. To close the door was to sever the bond and condemn the souls to oblivion. To open it was to feed an ancient hunger that demanded sacrifice after sacrifice. He looked up to the narrow shaft, of moonlight above, now distant and faint. The air grew thick, smelling of earth, iron, and old smoke. Ayo inhaled, feeling the bone-deep pull of destiny. He whispered, "I will carry the door." And in that moment, the cave trembled, and the violet light flared, a signal to worlds both seen and unseen that the feast had found its keeper. Ayo emerged from the cave, the violet glow fading behind him like a dying star, the obsidian blade now a part of his very essence, weightless but alive, humming in his veins. The village awaited in uneasy silence, faces drawn and pale as if they sensed the shift in the air. Baba Tunde stood at the center, no longer the old butcher but a shadow fading with the moonlight. "You are no longer an apprentice," he said softly, "but the gatekeeper. The meat remains pure because it carries the souls who cross the line. You feed the hunger with sacrifice, but you protect the balance." Ayo felt power surge through his limbs, strength, clarity, but also the bitter taste of loss. Memories flooded back, children who vanished, the faces in the smoke, his mother's voice calling through the blood. He understood now that the purity was not in the flesh itself, but in the willingness to remember and offer. Ayo looked toward the sky, where the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. He lifted the blade, now black as night and shining with an inner fire, and whispered an oath to the unseen gods, to guard the passage, to honor the price, to keep the village safe even as the hunger gnawed. The villagers bowed their heads, knowing the butcher was gone, replaced by something more, a keeper standing between worlds. Days passed, and the village thrummed with new life. Meat from Baba Tunde's old shed was now prepared by Ayo, but it was different, not just pure but sacred, imbued with stories and spirits of those who had crossed over. The animals seemed to approach willingly, their eyes reflecting calm acceptance rather than fear. Villagers who partook felt warmth and clarity, sometimes glimpses of lost loved ones in their dreams. But with this blessing came the shadow. Ayo felt the hunger inside him stir on moonless nights, a cold gnawing that only the ritual could soothe. He no longer feared the voices or the fog. He welcomed them, for they were reminders of the price paid and the promise kept. One evening, a woman arrived, a stranger with eyes as deep and old as the forest. She spoke in riddles, claiming to be a messenger from the ancestors, tasked to test Ayo's resolve. "Will you close the door or open it wider?" she asked, voice like wind through dead leaves. Ayo smiled faintly, knowing the answer was neither simple nor final. "I will walk the line," he said, "because the balance depends on the willing." The stranger left as mysteriously as she arrived, and the village settled into a fragile peace. Yet the rhythm of sacrifice and renewal continued, cycles of life and death weaving through the butcher's legacy. Ayo's name became legend, whispered in prayer and fear, respect and awe. But deep in the heart of the night, when the village lay silent and the stars flickered weakly, Ayo stood alone by the shrine, staring into the abyss beneath the stone slab. The obsidian blade gleamed, coldly in his hand, its hum rising to a song only he could hear. He knew the hunger would never fully rest. It was the price of purity, the cost of guarding the door between worlds. Sometimes in dreams, he saw the missing children smiling, waiting for him. Sometimes the smoke whispered his name, reminding him he was no longer just a man but a guardian, bound to an ancient pact written in blood and bone. He clenched the blade tightly, feeling the weight of all those memories, all those sacrifices, and whispered into the night, "I will remember. I will guard. I will feed." Years later, travelers passing near the village spoke of a butcher whose meat was unlike any other, pure, sweet, and untouched by rot or decay. Some claimed the butcher was a man, others a spirit, and some whispered the truth, that he was the gatekeeper, the one who kept the balance between life and death, sacrifice and salvation. The villagers never asked questions, only honored the meat and the feast, knowing it was a bond deeper than flesh, sealed in memory and blood. And on certain moonlit nights, if you listened closely, you could hear the faint pulse of drums beneath the earth, the soft footsteps of children walking home, and a voice, low and steady, promising protection and sacrifice forever intertwined. Baba Tunde was gone, but the door remained open, and Ayo, the keeper, stood watch, a silent guardian in the dark, his blade a beacon between worlds, his soul forever bound to the purity of the meat and the price it demanded. We hope you enjoyed today's story. Give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. That's all for today. We see you in the next story. Till then, take care, folks.